anticipating the outcome of that Inspector General investigation. As you know, that's been ongoing for some time. I'm hopeful that it'll be concluded within the next couple of months. And when we get those results, we'll take appropriate action. I don't know exactly what the findings are going to be, but it's always appropriate for us to review any findings of impropriety or misconduct and take appropriate action.
When you announced your decision to terminate the employment of FBI Director Comey, in that decision, you announced some practices that I took it to mean you thought were inappropriate actions on the part of the former FBI director. Do you think that those actions on his part would merit further investigation into how that whole matter was conducted?
Mr. Chairman, as you're aware, the Inspector General is conducting an investigation into the handling of that Hillary Clinton email investigation, and I believe that the matters that you've referred to are part of his investigation. The memo that you're familiar with that I provided reflects my personal opinion. It's not an official finding of misconduct. That's the Inspector General's job. He'll reach his own independent determination. But as you pointed out, my views about it are already known.
Are you aware of any prior efforts by the Judiciary Committee, this committee, to unduly restrict the ability of the intelligence community to do its job of protecting our national security?
I'm not personally aware of any, no, sir.
Are you aware that this committee has primary oversight of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act due in part to the significant constitutional and legal questions that government surveillance raises?
Mr. Chairman, I respect the Congress's decision about which committee has oversight. I know that both this committee and the Intelligence Committee have an interest in that issue.
Well, given that you understand this committee's jurisdiction and its history of providing the intelligence community with the tools it needs, why would we, in the words of the department, attempt to, quote, dismantle Section 702 of our nation's most important surveillance program?
Well, I certainly would hope that wouldn't be the case. I don't know who made the statement you're referring to. I know the department obviously has expressed its opinion about the reauthorization, which we think is critically important of Section 702. I respect there are differences of opinion, but I think the department has been very clear that we believe it's essential to national security that Section 702 be reauthorized.
Well, we agree with you that it's essential that Section 702 be reauthorized. We also believe that it's essential that the civil liberties of American citizens be protected and that a standard be imposed on the examination of information about U.S. citizens incidentally gathered as a part of the Section 702 program with the surveillance of non-U.S. citizens outside the United States, but incidentally gathering information about U.S. citizens and then being looked into by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation without a warrant. I'm not aware of that being appropriate in any other type of investigation that they might conduct. And we're not talking about terrorist attacks. We're not talking about national security because we have clearly distinguished that. We're simply talking about crimes that have already occurred that are being investigated as they should be investigated by the department, but under the procedures that the American people would expect that they would follow to protect their civil liberties in other circumstances.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I've had the advantage over the last 8 months of having a role in overseeing our national security operations. I discussed this with Director Wray yesterday, and if you'd like, I could give you a detailed explanation. It might take a couple of minutes, but I'd be happy to give you some details. But the bottom line is that it really is critical to national security that the FBI have the ability to query the data. That's the issue here.
And our legislation allows them to do that. But if the query provides a hit that they want to read an email, they want to see other documentation, they want to see in its full form, they're required to get a warrant under those circumstances.
And I discussed this with Director Wray, and what happens when the FBI conducts these queries, Mr. Chairman, is that typically they're leads that are not necessarily based on probable cause, but based on a lead, a suspicion, and the ability to query that data and then follow up on it gives the FBI the opportunity to put two and two together, to connect the dots.
There are lots of leads that any law enforcement person would like to pursue, but we have protections against them pursuing it without appropriate standard for doing it in a whole host of other ways to protect people from unreasonable searches. And this is a search of information about a United States citizen.
Well, it's a query as a constitutional matter. What we're
Allow the initial query. Once that results in something the agent wants to look at, I don't see how you distinguish the further reading of emails or other things from a search.
If I could take a couple of minutes, I could explain to you, I talked with Director Wray about an appropriate way to explain this publicly. Hypothetically, let's say, for example, that local police department receives a call that somebody has purchased a large quantity of hydrogen peroxide, and something made the clerk at the store